This is the new racing sim. I spent way too much money on it, but it was worth every dollar because this thing is absolutely mental. Now, naturally, being both a PC enthusiast and a car enthusiast, this was the next logical step. I've been waiting to build something like this for so long. I've just never had enough space until now. So let's talk about some of the parts that we're using here, starting with this main rig here. This is the TR8 Pro from Trak Racer, and it's all right. You know, I wanted something that was at least a little bit aesthetic. I know the meta for racing simulators are those aluminium profile rigs, the really boxy looking things. But to be honest, this thing is going to be in the studio. I at least want it to look a little bit interesting and aesthetic. So I ended up going with this instead. At the same time, I didn't want to sacrifice the ergonomics and the adjustability. That stuff is pretty important to me too. Finding a nice, comfortable driving posture. And for that, the TR8 Pro actually works pretty well. The build quality of the rig is all right. I'll probably give it like a 6 out of 10, you know, maybe a 10 out of 10 would be like a full CNC rig or something like that. But this one is not too bad. I did have a couple of problem areas where things just didn't line up 100%, and maybe I had to miss a screw here or there, but otherwise not too bad. And I think the main thing is that when it came to mounting everything, the direct drive wheelbase, the pedals, the seat, all of that was no issues at all. And then we have this massive thing right here, which is attached to the steering wheel, and it's the direct drive wheelbase. It's responsible for all of the torque and the steering resistance and that kind of realistic front axle feel that you get through the steering wheel. So it's pretty important for a racing sim, definitely not something that you want to cheap out on. Here I've actually gone with one of the best out there, which is the Simucube 2 Pro. It'll snap back at you when the car kicks into oversteer. You can feel bumps and curbs when the car gets a bit unsettled as well, but also when things are smooth and you can push a little bit harder. It's difficult for me to properly evaluate how good this thing truly is because I don't have anything to compare it to, but I will say it feels very responsive, and I feel like there's a really satisfying range of what you can feel. At the moment, I'm just using it with one of the more popular online presets out there, and that seems to be working pretty well. And then we have this, which is the steering wheel. So I found this company called Gomez Sim Industries, or GSI for short, and they make incredibly premium steering wheels for racing sims. So that's kind of what I was mostly interested in. I know there are a lot of companies out there doing like, you know, built-in displays and 7,000 buttons, which I'm honestly not going to use. I was mostly interested in a high-quality build, and that's exactly what this is. So believe it or not, this is actually the entry-level wheel called the X29. It is insanely premium. Full metal build, you've got these rubberized grips on the side. You do have lots of buttons and dials as well. You've also got these magnetic paddles on the back, which are insanely satisfying to use and just have a lot of attention to detail. I've got the quick release mounted on the back as well, so I can swap out to a different wheel if I want to. But yeah, overall, X29, very impressed. The pedals from a brand called VNM, probably the thing I did the least amount of research on if I'm being honest, but they're pretty solid. Very decent value. The build quality is super nice as well, and the setup and software was extremely easy, even as a complete noob like myself. The throttle feels nice and smooth. The brake pedal is a 200 kilo load cell, giving you a pretty close resistance to an actual braking system. But yeah, not a whole lot to say about these. They do exactly what I want. All right, but let's finally talk about these monitors. This was straight off the most expensive part of this entire rig, but I was really specific about which ones I wanted to use for this setup. So these are the 45-inch 240Hz OLEDs from LG. To be honest, I am super happy with these, and I think they might be the perfect monitor for a racing sim. Two main things here. So first is that 800R curve in the ultra-wide form factor. It really just wraps around you and creates a super immersive experience. But secondly, maybe more importantly, is that these are actually big monitors. I see a lot of people building these racing sims with super ultra-wide monitors, 49-inch, maybe even 57-inch monitors, but you're actually losing out on a lot of vertical screen size, which is super important for a racing sim to bring the track and the cars that you're racing in really to life. And I'm happy to report with these 45-inch monitors, despite them being ultra-wide, you still do get quite a lot of vertical screen size. I gotta say, when you're sitting inside this thing with the triple ultra-wide configuration, it just wraps around you perfectly with the 800R curve, and you are just super locked in. It feels amazing. Now, I did have one main concern with these monitors before I tested them out, and that was the pixel density. These are only 3440 by 1440 in terms of resolution, which typically you would see on a smaller 34-inch panel. These are 45 inches, so you're not actually getting a super high-res image with these. But I will honestly say, I think it's pretty much perfect for a racing sim. Not once have I thought that the image was too pixelated when I've been driving. You know, I can still see plenty of detail on the track, the surroundings, the cabin of whatever I'm driving is detailed enough too. Of course, more pixels would be better, it pretty much always is, but there is a certain point where it's just harder to run and it makes no visual difference. With these monitors, for this use case, I feel like I'm pretty much at that point. Unfortunately though, getting these all running nicely was not as easy as just plugging them in and opening up a game. First, I had to disable the DSC on every single monitor, which is known as display stream compression. I then had to downclock the monitors from 240Hz down to 144Hz, which was a bit painful, and then I had to set up NVIDIA Surround with the correct topology with a new resolution and refresh rate. I'm not sure if AMD GPUs are maybe a little bit better when it comes to the I/O, and maybe I could get all three monitors running on 240Hz there, but who really knows, maybe that's something that I'll test out. Either way though, 144Hz is smooth enough, and it is about the limit of what the 4080 can push out on this rig anyway with all three monitors running. So let's take a look at what this is actually like to drive and play on. So here we have this old F1 car. We're on this tight, windy circuit in Italy. This combo is a real handful, let me just say that, but it is an absolute blast. So just getting up to speed there, you can already see the car is fighting me. Going for a little bit of a beach day trip there. And then this section really rewards patience, just lifting off. Rotating a little bit, hitting the curb. But yeah, it is a blast, and that's kind of how I find myself enjoying this game, is kind of just learning. I'm still very much in that learning stage of racing games. This is kind of my first introduction to Assetto Corsa as well. I've never played Assetto Corsa before this. Being introduced to all of the fantastic mods for this game as well. The modding community is absolutely insane. I've done some very basic stuff, like the weather patch, the dynamic shadows. I mean, the track looks absolutely amazing here, as you can see. Sun setting, we've got that like warm glow over on the right. Car's really fighting me there, I should have braked earlier. Oh, I really love this section. I'm so bad at it, but it's still so fun. Again, this section just easing off. I think I'm mostly doing like 103-ish laps. My best is like a 102. I feel like if I really dial things in, maybe optimize my corner exits a little bit more, I can get probably close to a sub 1 minute lap with this car. But that's the fun part, right? Keep going at it, you keep going at it. Now look, I'm not gonna play like iRacing or, you know, race against others online. I'm so far away from that stage, but to hop in, try out different cars, try out different tracks, get immersed in the experience. Okay, that was a little bit better there. A little bit fast through that section, a little bit greedy. Very punishing. So yeah, no sense of fear, no sense of speed. There's no like G-forces or anything like that. I'm also not feeling anything at all through the seat because there's nothing here. It's just a, you know, completely solid rig. So you can't really feel when the car is slipping or anything like that. You can feel a little bit of vibration through the steering wheel, but if this was a real car, you would definitely feel the car slipping at the rear. As you can see here, if we get it to rotate and oversteer. But yeah, pretty much nothing, maybe just a little bit through the Simucube 2 Pro, and of course you can kind of see the camera move and the wheels snap back at you a little bit. So yeah, there are a lot of things here that separate this from a real life experience. You know, I'm not about to say that this is anywhere close to driving a real car. It's definitely not like that. Now, a lot of people would look at this rig and go, damn, that is pretty much as good as a racing simulator can ever get. Like, you went pretty much all out. But the truth is, this is maybe like halfway there. Sim racing is maybe the biggest rabbit hole that I've ever seen with anything related to PC gaming. Like, mechanical keyboards have nothing on this. You know, FPS setup, you could get the most expensive FPS setup and it would not be a fraction of like the most expensive sim racing setup. It is a completely different world that I honestly did not know even existed until I built this. So yeah, some of the things which I mentioned earlier, like not feeling anything through the seat, not feeling any motion of the rig, you can actually buy upgrades that will help you achieve that, but they are eye-wateringly expensive. You guys thought the RTX 4090 was expensive? I mean, I did too, until I saw how expensive stuff can get in the sim racing world. For example, pedals, right? The top pedal out there costs the same as 2 RTX 4090s. 2 4090s, and that's for one single pedal. And then you have like a decent motion system as well attached to the rig, kind of to emulate what braking and acceleration and turning would feel like. Those are like $5,000 plus easily. So yeah, it is just a completely different world. You have to have a different type of money to go all out in the sim racing world. Now, despite everything I just said, I'm still, you know, enthralled with the experience that you can get from this. I mean, these monitors just completely wrapping me in, you know, just feeling connected to everything, feeling that car when it's just hanging on. It is just an absolute blast. Like, I'm having so much fun. Something that I am keen to try out on this rig though is VR. The Pimax Crystal and the Quest 3 in particular, I've seen very, very good comments about. And you know, those would be way more affordable than this triple monitor setup here, which is easily the most expensive part of this entire rig. So I don't want to jump the gun, you know, I haven't tried it yet, but if you're planning on building something like this and maybe you're strapped for cash or you're strapped for space, you don't have a massive warehouse, which is understandable, I think VR is probably the way to go, at least judging by the consensus and kind of all the comments and how people talk about VR versus a triple monitor setup. But otherwise, I mean, pretty happy with how it turned out. I can pretty much recommend all of the parts that I've used here as well, and I will leave them linked down in the description of those who are interested in picking some of this stuff up. But yeah, I guess if you didn't know about racing sims before, well, now you know.